Now it's recording. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Today I have the immense pleasure to welcome Anne Kelly. We met now, what is it, 2 months ago, roughly, in,
Time
Cal-
flies.
yeah, time flies, in San Francisco, when I was presenting with the Oxford Entrepreneurs Network Bay Area chapter. So naturally, we have that mutual connection to Oxford. Um, but yeah, let me give you a bit of a background that we'll dive more into. N. Kelly is a senior engineering manager. Hope that was correct title.
You were correct.
Okay. That specializes in the VR vision products groups. She has over a decade of experience leading multi function teams of engineers, program managers, creatives on the forefront of AR, VR, and I'm sure, some AI as well. Um, she has a notable track record. She has previously driven a launch for Microsoft HoloLens and served as a presenter for Apple Vision Pro as it was debuted. And she is currently, if I'm not mistaken, MBA, EMBA student at Saïd,
I survived the EMBA, believe it or not. We are graduating, but yes, did go
or
through that program.
finished already. Yes,
We
finished.
made it out alive, shockingly.
Shockingly wonderful. And today we're gonna have a fireside chat where we talk about everything from, well, career to managing like life and everything in between that Vanessa will be leading. So Vanessa has been one of our stellar students working on AI over the past year. So she started in 2024 with a boot camp, and since then, she's worked mostly on an AI legal tech project called legalrescue.ai. Over the summer, she's been a wonderful AI teaching assistant as well for the helping teach the next cohort. Um, and so I'll hand it over to Vanessa to now guide the conversation further, and I'll just listen in and enjoy the conversation.
Thank you so much, Simon.
And also
Okay.
feel free
Yeah.
to correct me if I, I was wrong in any of
You
the.
you nailed all of the things, and very impressed you're still doing that while feeling under the weather. So thank you for joining. It's delightful to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Simon, for that. So before we begin, and Kelly, would you want to say something before we dive straight into the questions?
I think just the one thing I'd love to open this morning, or in your case, your evening with, is just I'm really really honored to be here with all of you. I understand you're doing incredible work, and that you are all very talented within your verticals. I obviously met Simon a couple of months ago and was impressed with the company's overall mission, and just the work that he described you all are doing. So I'm happy to share a bit about my background, and these are my personal perspectives. They're not the perspective of the company. But if there's anything that I can share advice on, very happy to do so.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe the pleasure is all ours as well. We're very, very excited for the session as well. So yeah, I think we can go straight into the questions. I think we have quorum now. So for starters, what were some of the pivotal moments or decisions that shaped your journey into leadership at Apple?
It's a good question. I'll step back a little bit and provide all of you a bit of context. I understand that many of you are looking at going into technical fields. I didn't start in technology, believe it or not. I actually started working more on the entertainment side. So, working with fashion, working with entertainment professionals in the Northwest in the United States. Um, and so I kind of backed into technology and I went the backwards direction. Um, there was a point in my career where I had to kind of make a decision between two different paths. At the time, I was in my early 20s, spending a lot of time in LA, working with a ton of agents there. And a friend of a friend was very much at the top of her field. She managed a lot of the leading artists at the time. And I was trying to decide, okay, I've done some work in technology, I've done some work in entertainment. I was at a fork in the road. Like, which direction do I take? And I asked her advice, which was like, you are at the top of your field today. If you were to go back 20, 30 years, is there anything you would have done differently? Um, and funnily enough, she thought for a minute and came back and said, I think I would have gone into real estate. And I was like, what? Like, you're an entertainment agent, you deal with these incredible personalities, you manage models. Like, why on earth would you have chosen real estate instead? And she had a very good sense of humor, but her candid answer was like, I would have had to think more. I would have used my brain more. And that's not to say that, talent agents are not wildly brilliant business people who are incredible at what they do. They really are. But it was more about, as she thought about her life, she would have chose to invest more intellectually early on. Um, so her advice stuck with me. And that's when I decided to ultimately go all in on technology. And no regrets. I think it's tempting when you're earlier in your career to focus on the short-term fun things. Um, and that can be a trap. You have to think about, what do you want to be at the end of your career, and who do you want to become, and then kind of work backwards. So I think that was probably the most pivotal moment where I had to decide which career I wanted to go down.
Okay, that's really interesting. Fashion into tech. That's a huge.
It
That's very,
happens. I
very
know, shocking.
interesting.
Believe it or not, people do it.
Ah, nice. That's very good to hear. So yeah, on to the next question. So you've worked on pioneering products like HoloLens and Vision Pro. What was the riskiest career decision you made that opened the biggest opportunity, and how did you decide to take it?
There wasn't one single decision, I would say, that was the riskiest, but rather a series of decisions over the course of many years to constantly say yes to every single opportunity or project that came my way, regardless of the fact of whether or not I was, the most skilled in that particular topic, if it involved taking on a huge amount of work or a really big risk, or if it was unglamorous. I think that advice is counterintuitive to most people, but I believe, especially when you're starting in your career and you're getting internships and you're taking certificates and you're really trying to build up your own brand in your career, say yes a lot when folks ask you to take things on, or assuming you have the cycles. Sometimes it will mean, you work 50, 60, 70, 80 hours, or God forbid, even more than that. But you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So say yes often, and just take the risk you might fail, but give it all you've got. People are more willing to help, I think, than you initially think. So when you ask for advice, very often you'll find that people will give it willingly, and they're more willing to lean in and help than you think. So even if you fail at a project, um, people respect when you go all in and you leave everything on the table. So take all the shots you're given. Um, and sooner or later, you'll realize you've really built a reputation on delivering things. And that's when magic starts to happen and more projects start to come your way. But um, I think take all the shots is probably the thing I would say.
Okay, okay. You missed you missed 100% of the chances you don't take. I think that's a brilliant mental note to make. Yeah, okay. So I think on to possibly the next quote unquote topic. So yeah, what advice would you give to students and early career engineers who want to succeed in tech?
Also, a really good question. A few things I would focus on are, number one, become as technical as you can early on. Like, even if it's hard, even if everyone else in the room doesn't look like you, even if you don't think you're good at math, or you had teachers or parents, or folks who you looked up to who doubted you, or even if you're terrified of knowing, like, or looking like you don't know it all, do it anyway. I think it'll pay dividends in your future. In the broader global market, there's a surplus of folks who are not technical, and a consistent shortage of those who really are. Now, this doesn't mean you have to run out and study subjects you absolutely hate, or that you have to go become an engineer, if the idea kills you. But it's more about whatever your field is, look to become as technical as you can within that vertical, because whoever understands how technology is transforming their field first and how to leverage it to their advantage often wins. So I think that's point number one. Number two, be really, really self-disciplined and have a strong work ethic. um, there's many times I've seen brilliant junior folks whose own worst enemy is kind of themselves. They want to get promoted while doing the least amount of effort, and life really doesn't work that way. It's like the world owes all of us nothing. And I'm going to 100% be throwing out quotes here, but I think the elevator to success is broken. You're going to have to hoof it and take the stairs. Um, if you want to be great at something, the quote of work-life balance really doesn't exist from what I've seen. It's more about work-life juggle at best. So you have to be honest with yourself about who do you really want to be, what kind of career do you want to have, and what are you willing to sacrifice and invest to get there. Um, Everyone has different values, so know what matters to you. Don't sacrifice the stuff that really feeds your soul. Two other things that I think are really, really helpful for folks starting out: work really hard to surround yourself with folks who are smarter than you. And when I say that, I mean people who know more about the subject than you do. Um, you will become really, really humble when you do that. And in the process, you'll gain more knowledge than you could on your own in 10 lifetimes. And more often than not, you'll have a lot of fun along the way. Um, when you have made it and you're super successful as you look down the road, I think it's really important that you don't forget the people who helped you along the way. And then last but not least, leading with value is really, really important. Um, Always asking what you can do to help goes a very long way, and being willing to follow through on that. Um, Being kind always matters. And one day, I think you'll find that you're one of, if not the most valuable people in your team, and maybe even the company, if you do those things.
Okay, thank you. That's pretty solid as well. So, on to the next question. So, what do leading tech companies actually look for in new developers? Does educational background matter as much as what you can actually build? Or yeah.
Totally fair. Personal perspective here. Um, just from my personal experience, I think some of the most talented engineers I know are self-taught, or just have an undergraduate degree. Um, One of the fantastic things about technology and engineering is that if you can do the work, you can do the work. So, going to a good school is an advantage, don't get me wrong. In many cases, good schools come with things like university recruiters and internships and networks that can absolutely give you a leg up. But those alone don't define your destiny or your career. So there's a lot you can do with teaching yourself. And at the end of the day, if yes, universities can help stand out on a resume, but if you can do the projects and pass the interview, there's just as many engineers I know who are very much self-taught. The other thing I'll say is, just be careful about when you're considering schools, managing school debt. Don't go getting in huge school loans that are 2 to 3 times more what a less glamorous school would be, because it's often not worth it. At least in the United States today, school loans can be insane, and the ROI, the return on investment, often isn't there. So when you're thinking about education, focus on what are you learning, what are you getting out of it, but don't necessarily get a degree that incurs more debt than the job you would get coming out of that degree could pay off, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely does. So, I think onto the next one. How do you manage imposter syndrome? I mean, figuring out you're in this big tech career, so it definitely possibly would get episodes of the same. So, how do you manage imposter syndrome?
Vanessa, also a good question. It's one that affects everybody. I think the easiest way to work through it is just by accepting completely and totally that every single humble person feels like an imposter. Everybody I know who is humble feels like an imposter. And that doesn't matter how brilliant they are or are not. So every day I go into work And in just about every single room I walk into, I honestly feel like the less informed or intelligent person in that room. Like, is that true? I don't know. Doesn't really matter. I feel that way. And I know most of my wonderful colleagues and friends feel the exact same. So at some point, you don't really see it as a downside. It's more you acknowledge it's 100% okay and even advantageous to be the person in the room who knows the least. And it means that one, I think you're in the right room because you have a lot to learn and you have so much room to grow. And just use that as a challenge to become even better, to learn every single day. We all feel like
Okay.
imposters. I think that's the soundbite I will leave with everybody.
Definitely, definitely. Especially, I think, okay, if you would possibly expound on the same, being, I don't want to say woman, but like female in a field that's very male dominated. How does that really affect, I wouldn't say performance, but does it affect how exactly you view things or approach situations and your need to be better than, yeah, people will possibly want you to be, or if that, yeah.
So it's a good question as well. I think whenever we walk, it's just as human beings, whenever we walk into any room, your first inclination is to look around and see who looks familiar, right? Like you always look for a friend or you look for someone who looks like you, someone you resonate with. Um, in any field, right, where a given population is a minority, whether or not that's women, people of a certain skin color, people from a certain ethnic or religious background, um, I think there is a level of consideration when you are the minority, right? So tailoring your communication style to the group that you're in, I think is really, really important. Um, I can definitely say that in terms of like mentors and folks who supported me, I've been incredibly lucky that a huge amount of those have been men as well as women. I work in a field where women are probably 10% of the workforce, but that's just because it's not just engineering, it's like a specialized field within engineering. I don't see that as a disadvantage because, again, I've had incredible allies who are gentlemen as well. But there always is that additional lens where you're like, okay, I may have to think about how do I communicate my points in a specific way so that it lands appropriately. How do I make sure that communication isn't about saying what I feel, it's more about ensuring the other person understands what I really mean. So there's definitely some work that has to go into that. And sometimes it means you're willing to go into the room and be the only person who looks like you at the table. That's okay. I think that we need more of us doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant answer, and I think it clears a lot of doubts some of us may have had on the same. So yeah, I think that's great. So on to the next question. So you've led engineering, research, media, and program management teams on cutting edge projects and really, really impressive work. So what leadership practices have helped you keep such diverse, disciplined, and aligned and equally valued by the team and people you work with?
There's this really interesting and valuable saying from an executive coach, Bill Kimball, and it says that your title makes you a manager, uh, but it's your people that make you a leader, and that is true. Um, Above all else, when you're building teams, your biggest and most important job is to hire well. You have to invest in ensuring that your hiring practices are on point and really go above and beyond to seek out and hire the best talent. At the end of the day, only you are responsible for the team you've built, not your recruiters, not your interview panel, not the managers who report to you. It's really on you and you alone. Um, I believe in leadership style that are, not built on authority, but are really built on empathy and in listening and recognizing that, the loudest voices aren't always the wisest. Um, Another, I think, important tenet that has served myself and a lot of colleagues who I know are very, very good at what they do well is you need to know when you know something about a subject, but not everything, right? Like the most dangerous or riskiest place to be in is when you think that you know it all. So if you're in a position one day where you have to hire and build a team that you aren't the subject matter expert in, And sooner or later, if you're successful enough, this is going to happen, right? You're going to have to scale a company. You're going to have to build a team. Uh, you're going to have to go out and hire the best people in those fields. So go out of your way to recruit the best talent. Make sure that they're smarter than you, not in everything, but in that thing. Make sure that that team complements your skills. When you hire a team, folks shouldn't be duplicates of one another. They shouldn't be copy, paste, but rather team members that really fulfill and round out each other's skills, including in varying levels of seniority as well as discipline. I think those are the most important points that I would think of when sharing with somebody who has to build teams across multiple disciplines.
Okay, okay. So do you possibly have a particular example of a scenario that this happened or that you'd like to
Oh,
share?
yes. Oh, man. So I will generalize this a little bit. Um, there was a time where we needed to conduct, or I needed to conduct kind of a team overhaul and kind of restructure and look at the project from a new lens. And this happened in the middle of COVID, or actually even towards the beginning of COVID, where we had a process, we thought it would work, and the entire world shut down. And in order to build and to kind of overhaul the structure of that work, I needed to find someone who's incredibly specialized in a very specific vertical. For example, user research or data collections. And that's a relatively high turnover field, depending where you are. So I effectively had to go on a hiring hunt. And there are plenty of times where you post a role and you will have to go through a pile of resumes and try to find which one is most relevant. But in this particular case, the world had kind of gone upside down. So there wasn't really a match in the resume pile. And I ended up ultimately having to just work through my network by talking to project managers and engineers that I knew and asking them, hey, do you know anyone in this field that is the best of the best in what they do? And it turned out there was a person who was, that was a contractor at the time. And I kind of had to chase that person down and I suggest a coffee chat and sell them a bit on the vision of the team that we were building and make clear to them the opportunity. And I pulled in my colleagues and leaders to help them see the potential in them coming to our team. I would say it took a few months of work to try to bring that person on, but there's no way we would have been successful without that person. So I think a lot of hiring managers, maybe not a lot, but some, you kind of view recruiting as a separate function to themselves. Like, oh, I have a recruiter. They're going to feed me a pipeline of people. If someone shows up, great. I view it as the opposite, right? Like the buck stops with you. If you're going to build a team, it's on you. You got to go out and do the work. And if you're not getting the resumes that you like that are a good fit, you need to go out and find those people, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, yes, definitely does. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. So, on to the next question. So, when developing Vision Pro, how did your team ensure the product was intuitive and accessible to people completely new to spatial computing while still pushing the boundaries of innovation?
Sharing a personal perspective here, in in my humble opinion, I think the most important thing I can say is that no incredible product is built by a few people alone. Behind every magical consumer product all of you have touched, or every product that has touched all of your lives, I would be willing to bet that there are hundreds, if not thousands, like really brilliant, quiet professionals behind it. Those include engineers, designers, project managers, QA folks, marketing folks, the list kind of goes on and on. Nobody really makes products alone. I think if someone says they have, I would be very skeptical in believing them. Again, personal perspective, but I think the reason that companies like Apple are able to make really advanced, technical, intuitive products is because it blends both world-class engineering with world-class design, and we don't do it alone.
Okay, okay, thank you. So, when coming up with this particular system, so what exactly are the most important skills for the engineers? You did mention that behind every, I'd say, incredible product is a very dedicated team of professionals. So what are the most important skills for the engineers working on this particular things and possibly particularly Vision Pro? Because yeah.
Oh, we could spend a lot of time on this. I will attempt to keep this succinct. And again, sharing just from my personal experience, and this is one opinion of many. I think the most successful folks that I've seen, and this is true in our current teams as well as teams I've worked in the past, I think the most successful engineers are the ones who really love the space they're in. And in my world specifically, that often means folks who really love augmented virtual reality, spatial computing, also called mixed reality, depending which world you're in. They love exploring like what's possible and really like dying on a hill to make moonshot projects happen. Those are the folks who go above and beyond. And because of that, they get above and beyond results. It's really hard to become great at something if you don't love it. That's why you gotta love what you do. So in a world where many people can, be strong app developers and have a strong understanding of iOS, for example, or Swift UI or 3D fundamentals and 3D graphics, the thing that differentiates folks and makes them outstanding really is a passion for what they do. Um, it may sound a little obvious, but believe it or not, it's not. Like, what is the thing that stands out? Is it's the folks who are always learning, are always passionate, that want to become better every single day.
Hey, thank you. So I think we were still on the topic on professionals and skills and careers. You could also answer the question in chat from Simon.
Oh, where's the
So
chat? Oh,
I
here we go.
think I
Chat.
could,
Now I'm looking.
yeah. So I can read it out. So when you seek to attract top people, how exactly do you do that?
Okay. There's a few different ways. I think there's the very obvious ones of making sure, number one, that your network knows that you're hiring, right? Whether that means you just got funding and you have a startup, or you have a team and you're trying to build it. So there's some very obvious social networks where you can share that. I think one of the most obvious and effective in the Valley, at least, has been LinkedIn. So making sure that it's not just on your recruiter, but again, it's on you. You're taking your roles, you're sharing them. If you know of roles that other great teams are hiring for, you're sharing them. You're having constant conversations with the folks that you know, saying, hey, I know this role is open. I'm looking for someone of this background. Do you know anybody? Believe it or not, I think a huge amount of hiring actually happens from our networks and the people that we know. And some of the best talent come from other folks who are really good high performers who refer other high performers. So getting the word out often and frequently is very important. Um, Another thing is, of course, you need to have competitive pay packages and you need to be really transparent about like the working culture of the company. But something that I think is really important that folks don't often touch on is making sure your values align with the company and your modus operandi and how you operate matches how the team operates. No, not everybody has to be a clone. It's not about that, but it's more about finding complementary working styles. Um, because really talented people want to work with really talented people. So you always want to make sure that every single time you hire, you're hiring someone even more talented than the last round, because like one bad apple can ruin the bushel, for example. It's very true in a team as well. So make sure you already have high performers in the team. Make sure you're using your network. Of course, you have levers to help negotiate pay packages and things depending where you are. Um, and understanding what is important to the candidate, right? Like that's really important as well. You want to ensure that they can grow within the team, and that those growth goals are aligned with your own if you're the hiring manager. Oh, I think you might be muted, Vanessa.
Sorry about that. So, you mentioned using LinkedIn as one of the platforms to like select people that you'd want to hire. So, are there any questions that you possibly would incline to asking during interviews or sessions you'd have with the people to know if you fit for your
Mm.
team? Yeah.
I think everybody has a set of favorite interview questions, and it can differ depending on the discipline. But if I were to kind of step back and look at some of the more common behavioral questions, I think behavioral questions are just as important, almost even maybe more important than some of the hard skills. Um, and I am attributing this to actually a question that one of my former managers asked me, and when I was interviewing, is give me an example of a time where you had to solve a really hard problem in an out of the box way. And candidates can take that question in a million different directions, right? And almost everyone, hopefully, can think of a time where they've had to do something novel or that was out of the ordinary to get a result done. But you learn a lot about how people approach challenges, how that person thinks, and how good are they at operating outside of the norm and out of the box when they have to. So I think that's when I ask almost everybody, in addition to the slew of traditional, technical or disciplinary questions you might ask.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think that's really nice. So yeah, I think on to the next one. What advice would you give to students and early career engineers who want to succeed in tech?
Mm. Some of this might be repeating myself, but I will do it at the risk of doing that. One, invest again in like developing your technical skills early, and it's never too late to start that. I think that pays dividends down the road. Say yes to every opportunity that comes your way, especially when you're early. You can only connect the dots looking backwards, so you might as well take the leap now. And how you do anything is how you do everything. It is incredibly important to do what you say you're going to do and to make your word worth something, especially now. Um, it's important to, be kind, even when it's hard and maybe that meeting isn't going the way you wanted it to, or that conversation isn't going the way you wanted it to. It's important to say thank you always. People forget these things, but it goes a long way. Um, be disciplined, even when it's hard. Um, Another important thing I think is not to be entitled. Like, don't fall into the trap of thinking that life or your boss or your company owes you something. At the end of the day, your life is on you. And lastly, hold yourself to a higher standard than anyone else possibly could. And if you do that, I don't think anything can stop you, right? Because the thing that is pushing you forward is ultimately yourself, and you're only ever competing against yourself.
Okay, okay. So could you possibly expound a bit more on the holding yourself at the highest value, which is definitely what should be the scenario, and not being entitled? How do you find a balance between that?
And yeah, it's tricky. I think the more often than not, I think every person on this call, you have an idea what you want to do in your life. Like, you're going after certain certificates, the internships or the jobs that you want. So you have to constantly ask yourself, like, every day, how do I become better at that thing? How do I truly strive to become the best in my field? Um, for some, that will mean diving deeper into a technical subject. For others, that may be seeking mentorship from other folks in that career to understand different perspectives and different impacts to the industry that will one day affect you. Um, Anticipating trends is really, really important, especially if you all are in technology, because moving very, very quickly. So being able to see around a corner is incredibly valuable. And believe it or not, it's not like a skill you're born with and a magic 8 ball. It's something you build over time. And you can learn a lot by listening to the thought leaders in your industry. So, for example, if you're trying to go down the path of spatial computing, you want to pay attention to what are the leading companies doing in that space, in the AR, VR space. If you want to be in the AI field, it's probably important for you to be watching um, you know, Google I/O when they announce the latest products and listening to podcasts. So it's a mix of asking yourself, what can you do to become better in your field? And that often means doing the hard thing. It's staying informed on who are the thought leaders in the industry? How are they thinking about this space? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And then constantly working to eventually match where you think that industry is going. Those are a couple things. When it comes to not being entitled, I think this is more of a value system based thing, but a lot of, well, again, maybe not a lot. Several mistakes I've seen made by more junior folks is thinking like, oh, I've been in this role for X amount of months or a year. I should automatically get promoted, just as an example. That's often not true. It's more about, it's not necessarily the time you've put in, it's more about what are the results that you're driving? What is the value that you're bringing to the company? Other factors like, hey, does the company have the budget to do that right now? How does the company think about promotions? How many levels do they have? How quickly do they progress? So it's understanding all of those things. If you can do that, you'll have a much more holistic understanding of what's possible, and then kind of working within the constructs of that reality. Um, Seeing from other lenses is really, really important instead of just seeing through your own.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much for that. So yeah, with AI advancing very rapidly, what can developers
Very.
do to make themselves yeah, irreplaceable or of value, regardless of the changes and rapid progression?
I think one of the lowest hanging fruit for everyone to be able to do is constantly look to be adopting and what we call dog fooding those new technologies. If you see a crazy new model come out, go and try it. Like get a demo. Whoever can leverage that technology in the most efficient way within their industry will gain the upper hand. So it's easy to fear what you don't understand. So really seek to understand. Um, and very often you will find yourself ahead of the curve that way. So I think trying things out early, often paying attention to the leading thought leaders are two very high value things that every single person on this call can do.
Thank you. Thank you. So do you, I think the big elephant question in the room, do you ever think we're getting to a point where AI will, I don't want to say completely wipe out devs and the work they do, but replace, quote unquote?
I think that, when it comes to questions like artificial general intelligence, I don't know. I don't think any of us have that answer. But if I had to venture a guess, I think that these AI tools and systems, and even if you look at super intelligent tools and systems, will make us much more efficient in what we do. Like even today, you'll see people vibe coding away, right? They'll create little POCs and apps and things, but you still need people to drive the vision of the product. You need people to integrate the product. You need people to scale the product. There's also a lot of concerns around using AI systems and IP, so intellectual property ownership. Like if something is created by an AI system, who does it belong to? Does it belong to you? Does it belong to that system? How do you navigate and scale that? And I don't think we have the answers to that either. But from what I've seen now, I've seen it make myself personally like much more productive. I've seen it work. I've seen colleagues become much more productive using these systems. So I don't see it as a replacement. I see it as an accelerator.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. So how should someone balance between specializing deeply into a particular field versus learning broadly across multiple stacks?
Oh, that's a very personal question. And I think the answer kind of lies in the type of career that you want to have. There's no right or wrong answer. I've gone in direction of like broad, spanning 3 to 4 different disciplines. I particularly enjoy multidisciplinary projects, but that's not everybody, right? Like the best, I think, advice I could give is experiment, try out both kinds of projects and follow what becomes most interesting to you. Like if you really want to go down the path of a PhD, it's very likely that's going to be very narrow. Whereas say a master's is more broad across different disciplines. So um, you got to try it out and see what really, really makes you excited and passionate about that space.
Yep, thank you, thank you. So on the same, many people dream of working at like large tech companies, Google, Microsoft, Apple Vision Pro. From your experience on the theme, so what do these companies look for in the next generation of developers?
I think it goes without saying, technical excellence is a really, really big one. Are you great at what you do? Are you innovative? Do you think outside the box? Other things that people don't talk as much about are, humbleness is really, really important. Having the capacity to grow and learn is incredibly important, especially in a space that moves so quickly. It's really hard to fill a cup that's already full. Culture fit is another really, really big one. So ensuring that your values align with the company and the manager for that purpose, because 90% of your exposure to a company is actually going to be through your direct manager. So ensuring that you have the same value system and priorities is going to be important. And last but not least is curiosity. It kind of goes with always learning and always trying to be better. It's hard to become great at what you do if you aren't curious about the next thing that's coming. So being willing to test and experiment and have fun with things is really important, at least for when I screen candidates.
Okay. So I'd also tend to believe that working in such companies comes with a lot of pressure to perform, not only from yourself, not only internal pressure, but like also from the people around you. So how demanding is it to work at Apple? Like what strategies do you use to maintain like your well-being as a person, your mental health stuff? How exactly do you prevent burnout in a case where there's a high pressure project and high pressure to deliver and yeah.
All the things. Again, I will wave the flag. This is just my personal take, and there are many, many perspectives on this. But first and foremost, I think it depends on the team that you work on. Apple, like any other company, is a huge company. So there's many divisions, many disciplines, many products. Um, and also teams tend to take on the, kind of operational style of the manager. From what I've seen, more stable kind of existing products tend to have more stable schedules. Like, when the next product's going to come out, when your software cycle is. Um, Whereas new R&D projects tend to be more peaks and valleys. Like, you're trying to build the plane while you're flying it. So there's more like high pressure, high ROI kind of events that are happening. To generalize, though, around the question of work-life balance, uh, I don't think there is such a thing as work-life balance. I really think there is only such a thing as work-life juggle. To dispel any notions that we have it all figured out. Personally, I think I really want to see extraordinary results in what I do, so I go to extraordinary lengths. And I'm not the only one. It's hard to be the best in your field um, if you check out at 5 p.m. every single day, right? That being said, I think it is incredibly important for everyone to know your boundaries, and your boundaries are not the same as the next person. For example, me personally, I don't really mind if I sleep like 4 to 6 hours a night. I do care, however, if I am, for example, constantly expected to miss my martial arts classes that are at 7 p.m., or if I can't take a vacation to celebrate a loved one's birthday, or if I can't go work remotely for a week to take an educational module at a university. My examples don't need to be anyone else's examples. What I'm ultimately saying is, however, I don't think burnout comes from a black and white binary, oh, I worked more than 40 hours this week, so I'm burned out. I think burnout happens when you are consistently expected to sacrifice the things that matter the most to you. And that is a very personal thing. So be super clear about what matters to you as a person, whether that's hours or, working from home or vacation days or whatever that is. Know what that is, build your boundaries around that, and then go above and beyond outside of that.
Okay, yep, I think that it makes a lot of sense and is very solid. So also on that case on working with people, working in teams, there's a question in the chat. So have you ever led a team comprising of folks all senior, both career-wise and age-wise? So in this case, you're possibly the junior in the team. And did you feel intimidated as your suggestions might have felt less backed up in terms of experience or know-how?
Okay, I'm going back and I'm staring at this text to make sure I understand all of the things. The folks, all senior. Okay, so Bhutan, feel free to, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but keep me honest if I'm not. Are you asking about have I led a team of folks that were both senior to me in terms of seniority as well as older than me? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Um, the answer is yes. I think whenever you go into companies where you have to lead teams, very often, sooner or later, if you need to build enough of those teams, quite often you will find you are the youngest person in the room, and you may have less experience within that specific vertical. And I think that, like, do you ever feel intimidated? Absolutely. I think everybody does. In fact, I'd start being worried if somebody didn't feel intimidated because, like, people are so good at what they do, especially in companies like Apple. The talent bar is so high um, that the people in that room are often the world's best at what they do. So if you didn't feel intimidated by them, you'd have to be like extremely confident. I don't know if that's a good thing either. So I think it's more about being comfortable with that. Like, it's being willing to acknowledge, yeah, I probably don't know the most here. But it's not about being the person who has all the answers. It's about being the person who asks the right questions and who builds the right environment for your team to ultimately be successful, and in knowing your own strengths. So I think just being honest with yourself, being comfortable with uncomfortability is important.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think that answers it, unless Buton would
Feel free to
possibly
interject
agree.
if you like.
I think that as just how to interpret the answer is just learn from the best that you can be the best, and even if it takes more time to adjust, when you start leading them. Thank you.
You're very welcome. The last thing I'll say in response to your question as well is it's incredibly important when you're leading folks who are really good at what they do is to give credit where credit is due. I'm a really big believer in, sharing the credit and owning the blame. If folks are doing incredible work, make sure that you champion them early and often. And that is something that both junior people and especially senior people also really appreciate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I think a bit more technical or like problem solving and debugging type of question. How do you usually approach designing a new feature or system before writing any code?
You got to start from, what is the use case? In Silicon Valley, there's lots of solutions looking for problems. Um, it's more supply driven versus demand driven. So it's incredibly important to start by asking yourself, what are we ultimately trying to build? And for who? And for what purpose? And under what constraints? And if you don't have good answers to that, you probably want to pump the brakes on building a POC. Like it's okay to do explorations, but if there isn't a few clear answers there, you're gonna see scope creep start to become a challenge because you're directionless. So, and if you truly don't know or you're seeking to refine an idea, personally, I always seek to involve others, including those who may have conflicting views on a topic. I think that's really the only way you get the best ideas to win. So ask yourself why you're building it. Ask yourself who is it for? How are they supposed to be using it? What are the constraints in which people, users, consumers, customers, whatever they may be, have to use this feature? And why does it matter? So I think that's the most important thing to answer before you go off and start building that feature or that system.
Okay. So do you have any, maybe apart from what you're currently doing, have you had any ideas that you wanted to build before, have started possibly, that you'd
Oh
want to
yeah.
share as examples?
Oh, so one of the things I just build my personal time. It's not something I published, but and it's just a little app that it's an iOS app that I could also can be used on Vision Pro, but it's something that helps me stay in contact or track the folks in my circle. I think all of you probably have many meetings in a day, tons of emails, and we all get to the point where we look at the calendar, we're like, oh my God, I forgot my friend's birthday, or I forgot that important date or their anniversary. So I just built a little app that helps pull in contacts, helps keep me on top of okay, what are the big days I need to pay attention to? Maybe reminds me when I need to reach back out to that really close friend that I haven't been in touch with for the last 6 months. So something that helps me stay connected with my circle. And then I kind of went through and figured out, okay, what are the latest APIs that we've released at WWDC? Can I implement some of those? For example, can I experiment with this mesh gradient that came out? Yeah, I think it's a fun way to stay on top of the latest things while also having a bit of fun with it.
Yeah, seems like you found some sort of workaround around the work-life juggle
Yeah,
on this
it is a
week.
thing. It is a thing.
Okay, so do you mentor younger engineers, students? If so, what common blind spots or mistakes do you see early career developers make?
I've spent a fair amount of time mentoring both, individuals that are more junior, and ironically enough, the other pool I spend a fair amount of time with are veterans. There's a veterans nonprofit that I volunteer with called the Honor Foundation, and they take folks coming out of the military, many of whom have only worked in the military, like they went just from high school straight into military service, and then coming out are trying to transition into industry. So um, I work with both groups. I think some common, mistakes or blind spots I've seen folks make is number one, honestly, the school debt thing. Like it is really, really important. I think I've seen schools charging insane amounts for tuition, especially in the United States. So you have to do the math and ask yourself, is it worth it? The other, I think, most common mistake I would say is, don't be precious or super entitled. Coming out, and especially during the pandemic, I think we saw this kind of wave of more junior folks wanting to make what were kind of unreasonable demands in their, initial expectations in the workforce. It was like, okay, I want to be able to work from home all the time. I want extra vacation, or I want to negotiate for this abnormally high package, when they didn't necessarily have the work history to match. So, or, wanting to get promoted if there wasn't necessarily the budget, for example. So I think in most cases, and this is again my personal experience, if someone is unreasonable about what's possible, I will be much more likely to pass on them and look at another candidate that is maybe a little bit more in touch with the market. My personal perspective is it's much more important to get your foot in the door in a company, with the right company where you align the values, where it is a good offer, where you really like the manager and you're in line with their expectations, because then you can always build and grow and prove yourself. I think getting in the door is probably the hardest thing. So I would focus on, my advice to the folks that I've mentored is find the right company, find the right role, find the right manager. Be reasonable in your requests. Yes, strive high, but be reasonable and understand from their lens, like the things they can do and the things they can't. For example, they can't change their company's vacation policy. I don't think anyone can. So know what those limitations are and get your foot in the door and then prove yourself from there.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful. Thank you. So I think on the same, we could possibly answer another question that's in the chat from Simon. So what are your values generally, I think, if I'm getting it correctly? And when you're a manager who's hiring, how do you convey this without it becoming just say good sounding words?
So, Simon, good question too. Uh, I think, well, so I'll say this in the lens of technology interviews, in which case very often you have a panel. So you as the hiring manager are interviewing the person, the other people in your team are interviewing the person, and sometimes your skip manager is interviewing the person. And if it's extremely senior, maybe even the person beyond that. So under that construct, I think the first thing that demonstrates your values in an interview process is, the other people you've hired in the team. Like, you can learn a lot about a manager style by the people they've already hired and having conversations with them. That's the first thing that stands out. In terms of my personal values, I think many of the things that I cited here, like number one, always pushing yourself to improve more than anybody else possibly can. Um, for me, that is something I very much embody as well as say. Like, I did multiple graduate degrees while working full time. I would take a full 8-hour day of classes at Oxford, then I would work a full 8-hour day, California time. I'll be doing that next week. So people listen to what you do, not what you say. I think it's important for managers to lead from the front. Like, if you have work that needs to be done in the office, you need to be there with your team. Like, I'm not going to go off and be kicking my feet up on the beach while my team is out there working, I really believe in hiring multidisciplinary teams, so folks who are able to complement each other and they're not the same as each other. Um, I believe in, doing what you say and being kind while you do it. And I think that goes a very long way. And I would hope that any of the folks on my team would echo that.
Thank you
Hey,
so much.
thank
I also realized we just have 3 more minutes before we end
It
this
was
off.
so fast.
Yeah, time flies. So I just want to be cautious of time so we don't run over. Uh, so Vanessa, there are 2 more questions. Do you think we'll have time for both of those, or we can?
Yeah,
I
think
guess we can
I've a
try.
lot of
Speed
yeah,
run.
yeah, we can.
Yes, speed run, and then
Yeah.
we can have a few closing words.
I can
Okay,
attempt to
so
answer these if you want. Let me know.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay,
maybe
so
yeah, I
maybe you
think
can read them, right? You can read them, and then you
uh,
just go for it. That's faster.
cool. Okay, so I think I see the question from Nuhaman, which is, don't you think that instead of only boosting productivity and helping us, AI is starting to limit our creativity in tech and problem solving? What's your opinion? Really good perspective. Technology can go in any direction that you point it. At the end of the day, it's about who's in the driver's seat. So if you have someone who, instead of trying to learn a concept, just wants AI to do it for them, they're not going to learn anything. Like, hey, AI, write me this contract, instead of actually trying to understand, for example, the law behind it. It is entirely how you decide to use it, and you use your own agency. So I think creative people can become much more productive using AI, or they could also, like, other people could just say, hey, copy the work of this artist. So it's both. It's not really an either or. It's more about how does an individual decide to use that. I have seen some folks outsourcing kind of the thinking process to AI, which I think is not so good. I think we should be using AI to improve our thinking process and bring in other perspectives and help us refine ideas, not just be out creating ideas for us necessarily. Um, I know we're speeding. Did I miss any other questions? Which one were we
Oh, and
looking
then
at?
at the bottom, from
Oh,
Johanna, and working.
when working with people who are more experienced or skilled, how do you suggest ideas you believe might be improvements, even if you're unsure because they likely know better? Have those conversations one on one. Like, you will learn so much just by asking them out for a coffee and like saying, hey, can I grab a coffee? Can we have a quick chat about this? People are much more transparent one on one. So just bouncing ideas off them, they'll actually, in my personal experience, they'll be grateful that you sought them out. They'll be more open to giving you feedback, even if it's constructive, whether it's good or bad. And then you'll know, so that you have that conversation one on one before you're in a room with 20 people.
Hmm.
I would say that's the way. And then last, I see Florence's question. Could you share an experience where something didn't go as planned in your career and how you approached turning it into a learning opportunity? Ooh, I feel like that will 100% take us over time. So maybe the answer is yes. I will answer in a future in a future call, because I know everyone here probably has meetings after this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. Do you have anything right now as well?
I unfortunately do, in like
Yeah,
5 minutes,
yeah, exactly.
maybe less.
So I think with that said, we're on the dot. This was wonderful. Thank you so, so much for coming in. This was really interesting for me as well. I'm also learning a lot. I will meet you next week. And
Can't wait.
is there some place where they can follow your journey or something? Uh,
Yeah, no,
or
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on X. I'm on Instagram, but I say LinkedIn is probably the easiest. Yeah, by all means, please send a connect invite. And I just want to say, I think you, Simon, the work you are doing in this organization of Vanessa and all of you on this call are doing is incredible. And I very much look forward to hearing in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now how your career journeys have progressed and the work you've done. That's, I think, the most exciting thing. So I'm very honored to have spent this time with you all.
okay, thank you. And then we'll be wrapping up, and then we'll have a video as well later on. Uh,
Sounds lovely. I will see you all on the other side. I hope you have a spectacular rest of your evening. Bye,
yes.
everybody.
Bye bye. Thank you. Okay, awesome. So we'll close the recording.